The Rio Grande, one of the world's most picturesque and historic rivers, has for centuries formed a barrier to east-west travel across northern New Mexico. For a distance of about 60 miles south of the Colorado border, the storied river cuts its way deeply through a mass of lava to form the Rio Grande Gorge, an abyss whose precipitous walls split open the earth to divide Taos County. This canyon crowded settlement and development by Spanish colonials onto the eastern shelf, while the big sky country of rolling hills, pinyon, and wheatgrass extending to the west went unpopulated. A few years before the turn of the century, a bridge was built where the Rio Hondo enters the gorge from the east, and a switchback road was carved into the sheer western wall. But this route, often impassable, was not the answer to modern automotive travel. For the past 30 years, the Highway Commission, civic groups, and the people of northern New Mexico have worked for an all-weather short route connecting Clayton on the east with Farmington and the west. But to do this, a bridge to span the gorge was necessary, an engineering and economic problem not easily solved. On July 12, 1963, 2,000 people gathered on the east rim of the Rio Grande Gorge, 10 miles northwest of Taos, to witness a generations-old dream become a reality, the start of one of the most spectacular bridges in the world. Officials and dignitaries from all parts of New Mexico heard Governor Campbell and Highway Commission Chairman John F. Suttereth predict that the bridge and the eventual realignment of U.S. Highway 64 would open vast new areas and recreational resources to economic development. That the bridge itself would become a major tourist attraction, which would build traffic across some of the state's most scenic country. A project of this magnitude could not be consummated without constant and diligent efforts by personalities vitally interested in the economy of the state. Governor Jack M. Campbell, State Highway Commission Chairman John Suttereth, and ex-Highway Commission member George Lavender were dedicated to this job. The first dirt for the bridge construction was turned in a dramatic manner. Governor Campbell plunged the handle of a detonator to touch off a dynamite charge that sent a column of smoke and dust soaring into the blue summer sky. Just 4 days later, the prime contractor, J.H. Ryan & Son of Albuquerque, started blasting and moving tons of rock to begin the first phase of the job, the approaches, piers, and abutments. July, August, September. These were ideal construction months in the high country. Ryan's men made the most of them. Before the 1,280 feet of space above the gorge could be spanned, 2,500 cubic yards of concrete had to be mixed and poured, steel reinforcing mats fabricated, and wooden retaining structures built. Day after day, the job of pouring the abutment went on. Bucket after bucket of concrete was dumped into the excavations deep in the solid rock of the canyon rim to anchor the stabilizing blocks that would serve as the base for temporary towers to support the aerial tramway cable that would carry the tools, men, and materials back and forth across the river. Great care was exercised during this phase of construction. Every batch of concrete was tested to be certain it met the high standards of the design. Steel reinforcing got the strongest welds, and the concrete was tamped and vibrated in the forms. This was construction engineered to outlast the pyramids. With the bridge approach finished, all was in readiness for the arrival of the High Line towers. While this initial construction was taking place, the towers and cable for the High Line were being fabricated and transported overland from Somerville, West Virginia, some 2,000 miles away. The task of assembling the towers and stretching the main cable across the canyon was, in itself, a major construction job. First, a small wire, hardly thicker than a piano string, was shot over to the west side of the gorge. Then, using increasingly larger sized wire, each with a higher load capacity, the main cable was fed across. The High Line, 3-inch cable supported between movable towers 180 feet high, was especially designed for this job. Actually, some of its parts would be used in the bridge after it was disassembled. From this cable, which was designed to carry in excess of 15 tons, virtually every piece of structural steel and many a truckload of concrete would be lowered into its proper location in its scheduled, allotted time. After the towers and cable were erected, a bosun chair, connected by radio intercom to a control booth located on the edge of the gorge, served as a sort of space station between the east and west rims. During the day-to-day operations, the man riding the bosun chair spent more time in space than the astronauts. This space hero's jobs, in many ways, were just as exacting as many performed in an outer space mission. Lowering steel and concrete to an exact spot, carrying the workmen back and forth from one side of the canyon to the other. Once the High Line was called upon to pick up and carry across the gorge a massive Caterpillar bulldozer, which had broken down on the west rim and needed to be taken to a workshop in Albuquerque for major repairs. Although it was not a recommended practice, the High Line was a good place to practice your tightrope walking. This fellow had the job of checking and greasing the main bearings. With the High Line in operation, work on both sides of the gorge could be carried on simultaneously. The next phase was to build the braced column piers to support each end of the steel arch that would span the gorge. These special circular forms were used to pour the many layers making up the 90-foot high piers. Jim Ryan took time out to show how these steel jackets would be placed. Two circular shafts connected to their centers by a thick wall of steel reinforced concrete in the traditional dumbbell shape. Each layer, the height of the circular form, was reinforced with steel mats and circular cages. These were made at the site on a production line basis. Long steel rods placed in jigs and welded together, each one a perfect circle. Would, when lowered into place inside the circular forms, give unbelievable strength to the massive columns. Week after week, men and machines stacked steel layers on concrete, and the twin columns, anchored deep, rose out of the cliffs on both sides of the river, 500 feet below. As evidence of their extreme interest in the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge project, Governor Jack M. Campbell and Highway Commission Chairman John Sudworth made numerous trips to the bridge site during its various stages of construction. On occasion, they were accompanied by the press and television cameramen. During these visits, through questions asked of the Highway Department's project engineer and the contractor superintendent, they expressed their concern for the proper and expeditious completion of the project, knowing that its completion would be the major step in opening an east-west route across the northern part of New Mexico and would contribute greatly to the economy of that area. Although George Lavender was no longer a member of the Highway Commission, he remained most active in seeing this project through to its conclusion. After a briefing on construction details, the party boarded the bosun's chair for a close-up view of all the completed phases. Climbing back to earth, the governor and commissioner had reason to feel pleased. It was apparent that the work was proceeding satisfactorily on schedule, and there had been no accidents of any kind. Bridge designer Charles Reed's many pages of blueprints were taking form, and the deep gorge that had so long divided the northern part of the state was well on its way to being spanned. One of the most interesting things about being a sidewalk engineer is watching the steelwork go into place. Bridge building is quite a bit different than most other kinds of construction. Every individual beam, panel, and brace that went into the Gorge Bridge was engineered and fabricated to precise detail at the shops of the American Bridge Company. Then coated and laid out in a marshalling yard, so that putting it together is like working with a giant erector set. Technically, the Gorge Bridge is known as a continuous steel deck truss design with a steel approach span, a cantilever bridge. When you put one of these together, you can build in 4 directions simultaneously. You fasten the main support members to each pier, then build toward land and out into space toward the center. In effect, it's just like joining 2 huge wall brackets in the middle. Of course, there are floor beams, diagonal webs, and vertical and horizontal sway bracing that complicate things just a little. But just follow the directions and it will all fit together and carry the load it was designed for. Speaking of load design, this bridge will carry a uniform load of 640 pounds per linear foot of bridge in each of its 2 lanes. Now, if that explanation is too technical, let's try it this way. You can put a 20-ton truck pulling a 16-ton semi-trailer in each lane at the center of the span, and it still would not be overloaded. Another example of the strength of this 1,280-foot span of steel is that it was designed to withstand a 90-mile-per-hour gale. Although the steel work could have been accomplished without the high line, it speeded up construction. Instead of rigging cranes at deck level on each side and moving them as construction advanced, the man in the bosun chair would carry the steel from the marshalling yard and hold it in place while the steel workers bolted it in place. Speaking of bolts, another statistic of interest is there are 56,612 bolts, each weighing approximately 2 pounds for a total of 61 tons, holding the structure together. Watching steelworkers is akin to the thrill of seeing an aerial act at the circus, and like circus acrobats, they too use a safety net. Before the steelwork began, a huge manila rope net was stretched across the gorge. After all, these men were working at the equivalent height of a city skyscraper. As a matter of fact, a 65-story building could be placed under the center arch. With bridge builders the world over, there comes a moment of triumph. They call it topping out. When the last structural member is lowered and bolted into place, it's a special ceremony. The last girder is carried into place, proudly flying the nation's flag, and the workmen gather round to celebrate this achievement. For now, it's possible for a man to walk from shore to shore, or in this case, from rim to rim, and finish the job. Working their way through the steel framework, painters gave every piece a heavy protective coating of aluminum. Though less colorful than the bright orange-red prime coat that was put on at the factory as a rust preventative, aluminum has proven itself best for long-run maintenance of steel bridge structures. After a breezy day, the painters looked as shiny and metallic as the bridge itself. The bridge deck was originally designed as an open grid, but this had to be changed for several reasons. The main reason for putting on a lightweight concrete slab was so that stockmen in the area could get their four-footed critters across. There was also a psychological factor involved. Many people, whether afoot or in a vehicle, suffer a fear of abnormal heights, and looking 650 feet down through an open grid could be a somewhat nerve-shattering experience. Before the allotted 485 construction days were up, 29,000 square feet of decking was poured. On the 28-foot roadway, 4-foot walkways with 3 offset observation platforms and guardrails were finished, and the job of cleaning up for the dedication was well underway. The major link in the long hoped-for northern route was completed. Now, the two halves of Taos County, which had been divided for centuries, were joined by the second highest bridge in the nation. The lands to the west were readily accessible. On September 10, 1965, only 396 working days after Governor Campbell detonated the charge which signaled start of construction, people from all over New Mexico again gathered at the gorge, this time on the west rim for the dedication. Taos businessmen, to whom the bridge had long been a dream, gave Governor Campbell a statue of himself straddling the gorge. Lieutenant Governor Mac Easley and Highway Commission Chairman John Suttereth commended the engineers and workmen who completed the job ahead of schedule. Those men whose efforts have opened a new route to progress in New Mexico. The governor called the bridge building an act of faith. He said, "There are two kinds of people in the world, those who build bridges and those who build walls. America has always favored the builders of bridges. The West was settled by men and women who looked forward, moved forward, and who refused to be stopped by rivers and canyons. I am proud today to be associated with you who spoke out early and never faltered. You were the people of vision and determination who made up your minds that there would be a bridge across the Rio Grande Gorge and that it would be built in your lifetime. We who love this area for what it is and what it can become earnestly pray that the spirit of cooperation and dedication, which led to the construction of this inspiring structure, will guide all your future efforts on behalf of this section of our state. May the Rio Grande Gorge Bridge be the bridge to a better life for all who pass this way."